This is the UV unwrapping portion of the tutorial for the simple building. Basically, this is our inspiration. We've got four materials. I like to always look at my object actually before I start building and kind of decide how I'm going to lay out my materials. So I've got a roof, I've got a brick, I've got some stone, and then I've got my windows. And we're going to keep this simple. This is going to be something off in the distance, and we don't need real high resolution. In the end, there's several ways to unwrap an object. Unwrapping is basically taking your three-dimensional object and applying it to the 2D space and then texturing that 2D space. There's several ways to do it. I'm going to show you two ways that I like to do it. One is basically taking four materials and applying it to the building and then baking it out as a single texture map. The other is actually just by hand building the texture map in Photoshop and then unwrapping your building to that. So two different ways to do it. You can end up with different resolutions of the image or the materials based on how you unwrap it. The second way that I described there actually could potentially end up with a higher resolution texturing. So it's somewhat advantageous to do it that way in my mind, but I'll just show you both ways and you can choose how you'd like to do it for yourself. So we're going to come back into Blender and we're going to start with that object. Just Shift A to make a cube. One other thing I didn't really show before is this magnet tool down here that can allow you to snap, and you can snap to increment, and that's going to kind of help you uniformly build if you want to do that. But tab to go into edit mode and face select the right cube here, and then G, Y, and just extend this out. And then let's make this a little wider. GX. Okay. To add a roof to it. And I'm just going to keep it simple just for the texturing part here. So we're going to extrude here, E, and bring something up. And then we're going to scale it, S, bring that in. And then SX, just bring it in the X dimension as close as we can. And then we're going to zoom in and then use vertex select mode here and shift left mouse click to pick those. Remember, I have left mouse to select. Come to the left side and remove and merge its center. Do the same thing to the other side here. And I'm going to just box select these, so B, and it picks both of them, make sure that's all that's selected, and then merge at center. Okay, so now we've got our object that we want to dress up. I'm going to select the whole thing here with A, G. I'm just going to move it over just a bit. Okay. So then let's go on the right side here and build our materials. So this world, or just this sort of globish object here, you've got your properties panel here, and just this globe right here. And we're going to go ahead and add a material. So come to the right side, it says add a new material slot. And let's just add 4 of them because we kind of know what we want here. Pick the top one, and then you're going to just rename it. So you got to do this new. So it just basically made 4 slots, and then every time you click new, you'll be able to write in a name for it. So we're going to call this brick and hit enter. Pick the next slot, pick new, and we're going to call this stone. Hit enter, new. Let's call this one roof. Enter, and then new. And let's call this one windows. Okay. So now we've got our 4 materials, but they're just basically blank. You can come down here and give them a diffuse color so that we can differentiate between them when we dress up our object. The one thing I forgot to do is here, let's put in our stone layer at the bottom. So come back over to this image here. We're still in edit mode. And I'm going to hit Control R to get a loop cut. And I want it to be that horizontal cut, so come over to a vertical line. And now I got my loop cut. I'm going to drop it down, left mouse click. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my snapping because I don't need that right now. So turn off that magnet down here. Alright, so now we've got our object. Let's go ahead and apply these textures to it. Now I know we don't have our images yet, but at least let's dress it up so that we can kind of see how all these differentiate. So the brick, and this doesn't matter in the end, we're not going to use these in any way. The very first material you use applies to the entire object. So right now I just picked the diffuse color of the brick, and it made the whole thing red. Now let's go ahead and pick the stone, and let's change the diffuse color of the stone to something grayish. It's like a gray blue there. Um, and then now we've done that, and let's pick this bottom row here. So you're going to go into face select mode and just pick these bottom panels around here. Okay, so I'm just shift left mouse clicking. I'm rotating by holding down the middle mouse button and just went all the way around and picked those. Okay, and we'll delete that bottom panel as well. Okay, so now you've got all your faces selected. Come over to stone here, left mouse click the stone, and then click assign. And so see now how that's shown up there. We're also in just solid object mode here, or viewport shading mode. Let's delete this off the bottom while we're here, X, and let's just go ahead and delete that, faces. Now some of the roofs we've had edges here, so I didn't make that edge. You'll see when we're texturing it what we'll have to do that. So maybe I'm just going to put an edge in here because you may have done that in the previous tutorial. And then I'm just going to go back into face select mode, and I'm going to expand out my roof just a little bit to give it an edge here. So S to scale, we're just going to bring it out. So you should see there now we've got an edge, and I'm doing that because I want to show you how you can end up texturing that as part of all of this. Okay, and now we've got our stone, our roof. Let's just make our roof a different color, change the diffuse on the roof just to something different. Like I said, it doesn't matter. Alright, and so now we've actually got these pieces selected. Let's pick these as well because this is part of the roof. And go ahead and make sure, see right now brick's picked. Make sure you pick the roof and then click assign. Okay, so now we've basically just told the program what materials go where. We're going to save the windows for the end because I haven't mapped them. We can do the windows as a plane, as like separate planes that we can duplicate across. We can also do the windows as part of the brick texture, so you'll have to decide how you want to do that. Sometimes it's a little more convenient to do the windows as separate planes, and then you can move them wherever you like. And you'll just have to kind of decide. I'll show you how to do both ways. And now basically we're going to assign some textures to all of this. So you're going to need to get a texture, and the place I go get most of my textures are cgtextures.com or just off of Google. I'm just going to show you here the textures that I picked up. But these 4 textures that I've got, my brick texture, this is from cgtextures.com. It's brick small new 0080, and this is a seamless texture. I grabbed this building. This is from the 18th century 0026, and that's also at cgtextures.com. Concrete plates. This is a seamless texture 0116, and then roof tile slate 0080, and that's also a seamless texture. So you can see the things that I'm going to have wrapping I want as seamless textures. This windows, because we're just going to be pulling off separate windows, or maybe you were going to pull these pillars. They don't necessarily need to be seamless. So we're going to go back into Blender here, and we're going to assign those textures to each of these materials. So let's go to our brick, and now you can see here to the right of the brick is this checkerboard panel, the right of this circle. Now this is the same as in Unity when you click on a material and you've got that albedo channel. This is sort of that same thing, but it's just not coming down vertically and you can see it. It's just on another page. So this is a little confusing in Blender, but if you click on the checkerboard, you'll see brick and then an arrow next to it. So I'm actually inside the brick material, and I'm going to assign a new texture to that. So I'm going to click New, and then I'm going to come down, and you may have to scroll down depending how your screen is, and come down to this Open. So now we're inside of brick. We've added a texture to it. It's blank. We click Open Image, and now I'm going to go and pick that brick texture. So you may have to find where you've saved all that on your desktop or on your computer, and I'm bringing that brick in. It's probably a good time now for you to just do File and do File Save As, and I'm doing this as test blend here. And now when you go back and select things, it's going to keep pointing you back to that same folder. So anyway, we've now assigned the brick texture in here, and so if we change our viewport, um, we'll get to see this brick texture on here once we start the UV unwrap. Now, the brick texture, I believe, may show up on the entire object. Let's see. Yeah, it's not going to show yet because we haven't unwrapped it. But let's keep building our texture. So now you can see our brick texture on the brick. Let's go to the stone, come to the checkerboard, add new, open, and grab that the concrete plates for the stone. And we'll come back to the globe here. Now we're going to go to the roof. See the stone there. Go to the roof. Go to the checkerboard, add new, open. Click on the roof tiles, and then the windows, same thing, and I'm just going to add that whole image of that 18th century building. Okay. Alright, so now we're going to start the unwrapping portion of all this. We've got our materials ready, and we can always go back and edit anything later. We can change these images that we've brought in however we may like. So come to this top right, and you're going to see these three lines, this triangle up in the corner. Left mouse click and drag to the left. So see how that opens a new window here? And we're going to do our UV unwrapping in that window. Now if you ever want to get rid of this window on the right, come back to that triangle, left mouse click it, and then see that, how it changed that? And we go to the right here, and it's going to overwrite that and make that window go away. So left mouse click, now we've got our window. It's got these set of tools because it's the same. We're in the same view here. We're in the 3D view. Come down here at the 3D view on the right panel and change that to UV image editor. Okay. So this is where we're going to do our unwrapping. We're going to start with the roof, and that's kind of the hardest one. And one thing I didn't show you yet is, see where it says select over here? Watch this. If I pick brick and click select now, let me deselect the object. If I click brick and click select, see how it's just picking the brick texture or the brick portion of the building? So this is a convenient way now that A to deselect there, that you can pick different parts that you've assigned here. You'll see later on that's kind of convenient. So anyway, let's start with the roof. So I'm going to pick the roof and hit select. So that's my whole roof. Now, in order to unwrap this, you can do it by hand or you can have the computer do it for you. The first thing I actually do is I unwrap the whole object. So hit A to deselect and A to select the whole object. And then let's hit U to unwrap. And let's click Smart UV Project. Leave it as the defaults and click OK. So this is our entire object unwrapped. We could actually just texture it and be done with this. And this would work well for this object. The only reason I'm suggesting doing some other things is because in the end you can get a higher resolution and you're going to have more complicated objects. So you don't want to just use all these squares and fill the space in this manner, because then your resolution on your object may not be quite as good, especially if you've got it closer to the core. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically overlap things that match. So this part of the building on the roof and this part match, and so I want to overlap those. So come over here to the right panel, and all the keys that work on the left tend to work on the right as well, and you're working independently on these two. So if nothing's selected over here right now, but if I hit A, everything's orange and everything's selected again. Now if I hit G to grab, just like we do with other things, we can move it out of the way. Now what I'm doing is I'm just moving it out of the way, and once every object is not in this spot, then we know we're done texturing. I'm just doing it so I can see what needs to be applied. And basically, let's start with the top of the roof. So you can see these shapes are not symmetrical, and I want them to be symmetrical because this part and this part are the same. And so come over here to the left and hit 5. That gets you an ortho view, and then hit 7. So now I've got this straight above view. And now hit U and pick project from view. So this is basically going to project this object directly above and keep them all in the same relation to each other. So see how I did that? Now this wouldn't work. Let's bring in that roof texture so you can see it. So come here, browse image to be linked, and let's change this now to be that roof. And then let's come over here and change this to texture view. Now I'm going to remove our light for right now, our lamp. So hit tab to get back to object mode, click on your lamp, click X and delete. Okay, so now we'll be able to see everything. This is just while we're working, we can always put the lamp back in. Okay, so now you see, there's my roof. So let's hit tab to go back, pick your object, left mouse, and then tab to go back in edit mode. And I'm going to R to rotate that, and then type in 90 and hit enter. And now you'll see, as we hit S to scale, we can start getting our tiling of our roof here. Now what you'll see is I've gone outside of the bounds of this. This is a seamless texture, and it will keep basically wrapping correctly for us. And you don't have to worry about going outside the bounds of the UV space here. And so in the end, we're going to get this to what we want. I kind of actually want these to be more rectangular than squarish. So let's just S, X, and then we can stretch it out. We're actually just bringing the shape in, which is essentially stretching out these tiles in the X dimension. So can you see that, how we now have converted it? So the texture even had squarish looking roof tiles, but I want them to be rectangular, so I can stretch it a little bit and get away with that. Alright, so I like how that looks. Now what you'll see is these look okay, but honestly if this had shadowing in it, this one right here would be upside down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab these G and move them out of the way, and then you're going to see I'm going to overlay them, and so that we're going to get identical mapping for those. So I'm going to pick this bottom larger panel of the roof, and you can see it's upside down. So G and drag it over top of our texture here, and then you're going to R 180, enter. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab the other one, and I want them to match up and overlay them. Now you got to come over here on the UV portion of this, the right side, and make the window large enough so you can see the magnet, and turn the magnet on, and then snap to vertex. And what that's going to do is if I hit G here, you're going to see it's going to snap right over top of the other one. So now you'll see I've got identical mapping for these two parts of the roof. Okay, and that's what I want. So now if I hit B to box select, hit A here, sorry, B to box select, left mouse click and drag, you'll see I've selected both the panels. You can also just shift left mouse click and pick them. Now that I have both picked, what I want to show you is sometimes, I'm going to hit G here and move it with the, escape, take off the magnet. Sometimes G to move it, and then just use the arrows. You may drop something down and it looks like this, where at the bottom of this, you don't want it to end halfway, the roofer wouldn't do it that way. So G to grab, and now you may not want to be this anal, but let me Control Z it back to the middle, G to grab, and you can see with the arrow keys you can just move it until it's where you want it. And sometimes, and then hit enter, sometimes the same may be true at the top of the roof. You don't want it to end in a funny position. So you can do some stretching. Remember, on the right side you can do the same tools that you've done on the left. So you can do S to scale and Y, and then it's just going to move it in the Y dimension only. Alright, so escape, I don't want that. So now all we got to do is fix these tiles on the end, because they're running vertically and we don't want that. So let's overlay these, which means we're going to just come over here on the left, and I'm going to rotate this R, and this is 270, enter. Rotate this one R 90, enter. Then put that magnet back on, G, and get them overlaid. Okay, we can now turn the magnet off, G to grab. Sorry, so now you see I've only got one. Escape that, hit B to box select, and you'll pick them both up. Or you can come over to here and shift left mouse and pick them both up. G to grab and move it back over here. Now what you'll see is we're just still not the right dimension. And what we have to do is in this y dimension, we're correct in the x, we're correct in the width of this, but we want to fix the height of it. So we're going to just do G, move this down a little, and then I'm going to do SY. And what that's doing is just scaling us in the y dimension and do it till we're just right. So a little bit long there, and so I'm going to go G and move it. See that? So hopefully you saw that. And now what that allows me to do is see how these are now lining up vertically. So that's a little nitpicky, but it looks nice. Now you can adjust some things out if you say, well, you're not right in the X, which I'm not. We can SX and we can scale it and look a little better in our X dimension as well here. Alright, so you're going to have to eyeball some things a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so now we can move on to doing the same with the brick. So remember, come over here on the side, pick brick, and I'm going to click select. See, it already did it for us. So picked up all those brick panels. Now for the brick, what we're going to do is something different. We're going to pick an edge and mark the seam. So pick this edge here, so edge select mode, and then I've just picked this one edge here vertically. And I'm going to control E and click mark seam. What mark seam does is, now see how it made this red? Mark seam is basically telling the computer to make a cut here. So just think of this like a paper object. It's going to make a cut here, and it's going to unwrap these rectangles in a straight line. So let's pick all the brick tiles. You can come over here and shift left mouse and face select, or you can come over here, pick your brick texture and hit select. So now all my brick panels are selected, and then I'm going to click U and just pick unwrap. See what happened here is it unwrapped these in the correct dimensions, and it did it in a straight line. Now watch this. I want to just clear that seam just to show you what would have happened if we didn't have that seam. So control E, or let's pick the seam first. I'm going to pick this edge, control E, clear seam. So now if I go back into select all the brick panels, if I click U and click unwrap, see what happened? So that's not what you're going to want. You could also do U and do like Q projection, and it would do it in a straight line, but you can see that that's still not exactly what we want because it's overlapping some of these in a weird way. So what I want to do sometimes is control how the computer unwraps this. So I'm going to pick my edge, control E, mark seam, and then go back into face select, pick all these, or we could have done it on the material. Alright, we got them all picked, U, and then we're going to just unwrap. So see how we're just even going back and changing the unwrapping. Don't panic. And then come over here and let's pick the brick texture so we can see that show up here. Alright, so we're good. We obviously don't want it at that dimension, so we're just going to S to scale and just keep bringing it up till you're happy. You know, you want this to be a real dense brick. And like I said, you got to eyeball some of this till you like it. Alright, that looks pretty good. And let's go do the same thing with the stone. Let's pick stone, click select here. Forgot, got to deselect A. Pick stone, click select. So now we've got the stone. Let's mark our seam first. Sorry, so pick the edge, control E, mark seam. Come over here on the right, select. Now our stone's picked. And let's re-unwrap that. So U, unwrap. Alright. Now we've got an edge picked here that is part of the brick texture. So I'm going to come here and go back into just face select and shift click around. What I don't want to do is scale another vertex that I'm not supposed to be scaling. Alright, so come back over here on the right panel and pick the concrete, and now you see it's showing up. So we just have to scale it. So S to scale and start to get this to come in looking better. Alright, we're close. And and then G, move it up. I'm going to S and scale it a little smaller. So maybe just have 4 lines around. Alright. So now the only thing we got left is sort of our underside of the roof and our windows. And so let's do the underside of the roof. I'm going to reassign the underside of the roof to the windows texture, and you're going to see why here. I want black here. So windows assign. And then come over here and pick the window texture. And then what I'm going to do is, I don't really care about these shapes as much. I'm going to just scale them. I'm going to overlap them and then scale them down to nothing because I just want them to be just black. So you can come over here and deselect, pick the magnet, pick one of these, G, and then overlap them. Pick this one, G, and kind of stack them together, G. Alright, take the magnet off. B to box select the whole thing, and S to just, oops, somehow I picked up another vertex. A to deselect, B to box select. Alright, S to scale this down to nothing. And I don't know, I want the windows here. I have that picked, so just make sure it's assigned there. Put this on window. And sometimes Blender acts goofy and the window is not showing up here. So what you're going to do now is we're going to save, file, save, and then you're going to go file, open recent, and click the name of your tutorial, and it's not doing it. So I don't know if you see what's happening here, but Blender's refusing to change this panel here, even though it's actually happened. You can hit G to grab over here. There, now it changed. It's just a little buggy there. B to box select. G. The only thing I was going to do is jump out and jump back in, so you could close it if you've saved it and come back in. So you can see I'm just scaling this down real tiny, and I just want something dark. You know, that's just the underside. It doesn't really matter. Now in the end too, let's go back and pick our roofing tile. I don't want that lip to be able to be seen that well, so I'm actually going to just drop this down. So I'm going to move it in the Z axis, so G, Z, and just lower it. So now from a distance, you'll be able to see there is some overlay. Let's make it a little S to scale a little bigger. But in the end, it's not all that visible. Okay, so let's make our window here real quick, and that'll be the last part of this first section, and then we'll bake our map here. So Shift A to make a plane, G, X, bring it out, R, Y, 90. Okay, so now that's just big, so we're going to S to scale it, G, and just bring it over here. So you're going to have to kind of figure out how big you want your window, but let's just say this is kind of what we're going to use for our template for our window. So let's texture this window first. So let's go to Windows, and you're going to assign that the Windows texture, and then what you're going to do is unwrap this. So you're going to hit U, unwrap, and it just makes the square. We want this to be on the window, so you can see it's the window's showing up here, but Blender's being a pain, and it's not showing up right. So file, save, see if we can force it, open recent, test, and get force Blender into showing it. I don't know why it does that. So now we just got to scale it in the X, SX. So we want to pick up one of these windows, SY. You know, so something like that. So now I don't have it on the building just right. I'm going to hit G, X, and I'm going to move it here, and you can move it also, G, X. You can move it with your mouse or your numpad keys, which is finer control, and that's what I do. I do it till, so disappears, comes out. So this is left, right, left, right. Now, if you leave it there, you're going to get Z fighting. So I come out at least 2 more after it shows up and then hit enter. And so when you bring it into Unity, if you find you're getting some Z fighting, you may need to just bring this out. And what I mean by Z fighting is from a distance you'll get flashing. So we've all seen that where someone's got some object on the course, maybe imported from SketchUp, and it's got annoying flashing with it, and you just may need to move something away from a wall if it's not integrated. Now you could build the window into the wall by creating loop cuts or subdividing different panels. I'll just show you that real quick. Hit W, you can subdivide, or you could do our loop cuts, which were those control R's. But if you hit W here and then you come over to number of cuts on the left, you can see we can subdivide this out. After subdividing, I just hit enter there, you can come and face select, and so then you can pick a couple and then hit F, and then that merges those. So in the end, now you could use this panel. I'm going to hit U, unwrap it, and it's brick right now, but let's assign this to the window. And so pick in window here and click on assign, and then I'm going to pick this window texture, and you're going to see, okay, so now I've reassigned this, just this square, to window. And then we could, same thing, just scale it down and make this a window that way. Whichever's easier for you. It's probably easier to create this window, and then I'll show you. I'm going to Control Z all this out. Okay, the other thing, now we got a window, you can just duplicate this guy. So Shift D duplicates the window, and then let's just move it in the Y dimension. So hit Y, and then now you can pick 2 of them, Shift D, and hit Z, and see, now we're just dropping windows. Now let's pick all 4 of them. Sorry. Shift D. You see what I'm getting at. Shift D, Y. Okay, so now we got a bunch of windows, but they look silly because they all look the same. So what you can do is, now they all have independent UV maps. They're just overlaid on each other right now. If you pick this one and come over here and G to grab it and go to a different window. Okay, so this is to get some variety here. And you can just move this around and don't really have to do too much here. Alright, so I think y'all get that. So let's leave it at this. Now I think you know how you can handle basic texture in the building. But now let's take all this and bake it to a single texture so that we can take it into Unity and have a single material for our object. Okay, so if you've made it this far, I'm going to just make your head hurt a little more. Come to this triangle here. So this is the data panel. If you click on that triangle, you're going to see down here that there's something called UV map. That's all our coordinates for this object that we've just done. And I'm going to rename it. I'm going to double click it, and I'm just going to call it base. And we're going to make a new UV map. Okay, so hit this plus over here and see where it says UV map now. Let's call this baked UV. So in the end, we're going to make a whole new UV map, but it's going to be a lot easier. And we're going to then bake the textures that we've already laid out on this to our new map. And you'll see how we're going to do that. So now I've got this baked UV map selected, and you're going to be able to kind of cycle between and go back to the old UV map. So you can have as many UVs as you want on an object, but in the end we're going to go down to a single UV map. So I'm going to hit A to select the whole object, and we're going to re-unwrap to this new baked UV. And so I'm going to hit U and do our smart UV project, leave it as is, and hit OK. All right, and then G to grab and move this out of the way. So now you'll see we've messed it up. And in the end, we can go back to our base and now our baked. And all the baked I want to do is, let's see if I can get this to show our square. What I want to do for the baked is basically get it to fill the bounds of the square as much as we can. Okay, so I'm going to take some of these objects and overlay them just as we did before. And so let's start with the roof. So 7 to go from above, and then we're going to go into face select mode. I'm going to change this temporarily to just solid. I'm going to hit U, project from view. You know, we've done that before. G to grab. And we just want to overlay pieces. G, pull this down. G, pull this down. R, 180. Go into your magnet. G. Okay, same thing with the triangles. R, 90. Enter. R, 270. Enter. G. Okay, so now we've overlaid some of the brick stuff, or some of the roof. Let's do the same for these larger panels of the brick. G, move them out. And now you can see, remember, they're not wrapped correctly, so let's pick the brick again, and we've got that seam marked as we had before, I believe. I don't know if it saves it or not. We'll try U, and just unwrap. Okay, so it didn't save our, I don't know if I didn't save that seam. See it. Let's mark a seam here. Control E, mark seam, and let's face select and pick the brick around. U, unwrap, G. Oh, I see what I've got it in this magnet mode. So turn off your magnet. This is fine. But same thing, you're just going to overlay these pieces. Put your magnet back on. G. Let's rotate this one. R90. G. Okay, so these are pieces that are all matching each other. Do the same for the stone row. You'll see the method to the madness in just a bit. Hang in there. U, unwrap. G, bring these out. G, left mouse click, G. Alright, we're close. We're getting there. What is this part? I'm confused what the heck that is. I'm going to delete it. X, faces. Somehow I must have made an extra face. Maybe I did that when I was mucking around with the windows. Alright, so let's project these windows. U, unwrap, and then let's just stack them all. G, G, G. Now, it's not the way you would want to do the windows, to be honest, because what's going to happen is the windows are all going to now bake a single window texture for all of them. Let's leave them separate. You would maybe want to know what windows were the same. You know, you'd have to go back to your base and see, and then you could match up your windows so that you didn't waste texture space. Let's tidy this up here. We're almost there. G, R90, R90, G. Remember this, I don't really care much about. This is the underside. B to box select, G. So I'm going to shrink these way down. B to box select, S to scale, bring this just way down. G to grab, and just put them up here. Let's turn off the magnet. So now what you're going to see, what we're going to do is, the bigger the object is here, the higher the resolution for it. So in the end, we want to leave B to box select this, R90, and then it's kind of like a puzzle. G, and you're just going to want to figure out how you want to lay these things in here. B to box select, G, and you're just going to kind of try to fill as much of this space as you can. I'm going to shrink these windows down. S to scale, G, G. Okay. Leaving things behind. B, G. You're going to have to scale this down a little bit to get it to fit. G. Now you don't want anything overlapping here for this. A, B, B to box select, pick them up. And you're going to see what's going to happen. Basically, the texture from the old UV map, the base, G, is going to draw onto these images, B, G. So now that's the only thing I want to scale up is this part. This is our stone, and we don't want it to be that tiny because then it's not going to be real detailed. So B to box select, and then we're going to S to scale these guys up, G. We could even stack it in better and get these bigger. I hope this makes sense. What you're trying to do is get objects as big as you can. We can play with this and get it even nicer. But the bigger the object is, the higher the resolution is going to be for this single texture. So now what we're going to need to do is go back and bake this onto this here. So we need to make a new texture. So come down here in the UV side and click plus. And we're going to make a new texture. We're going to call it baked. Baked UV. And let's make it 2048 by 2048. So select this 2048. Seriously? I'm going to have to do a new one here. Baked UV 2048. Enter. 2048. Enter. Okay. So I'm now going to pick, I've got this new baked UV 01. It's mine. But anyway, make sure you make a new map, select it, and then what you're going to do is come over here and you're going to make sure that baked UV is selected and it's not changing here. File, save, file, open, recent test blend. I need to get it to change to the baked UV. Okay, so sorry. Just show you how you got to do this. Is you got to select the whole object. So that's just using A to select it, or to select the entire object, and then change it to this baked UV. So now you can see when we're on our base, it looks how we want it. When we're on a baked UV, it's just dark, and we're going to fix that here in just a second. So you're going to click on this camera tool, and you're going to come down here, so you might have to scroll down. And this is in the render panel, and click on bake here, and change the bake, increase the triangle, or click the triangle, increase this down here, and you're going to see bake mode is full render. I want to change that to textures. All I want is it to bake from the base to this baked UV is the textures only, and then leave this check mark box as clear, and then we should be able to just bake image textures of select objects. So we got the whole thing selected. If we click bake, it's now going to bake from base to baked UV here. So hopefully you guys can see that. Now what I could have done here is I should have made it just this 16-bit color depth. So change your PNG, because what's going to happen is it's going to make a PNG file for you. And let's do this 16-bit, rebake it. Alright, we're close now. This now we have our texture, but we got to save it. So see where this image star is? It means it's not yet saved. So just do save as image, and then let's just call this what this is. This is the building texture. You know, I would maybe even just call it whatever your school building. I'm just gonna call it building, and then you're gonna see we're gonna have now a PNG called building. .png, and that I'm going to use as my albedo channel in Unity for this material. So you can see it baked it out for us, and it's going to handle the mapping. Somehow I've screwed up this building panel. Hopefully you didn't do that. I think it had to do when I was mucking around with the windows. We could go back and fix that, and so you would just make sure you're in the baked UV, come back in and fix the mapping on that one. It's done it both sides, so I think I've maybe got these flipped on each other somehow. Let's see here. Let's see if we can fix it real quick. So let's just mirror this. Control E, maybe. No. Escape. W. No. About UVs. Just got the one selected. Do UVs. Mirror on the x-axis. Let's see if I rebake it, what happens here. Go back to render, bake. You know what may happen? You may not be getting this result. I think when I subdivided this, it probably screwed things up a smidge. Although I think I scrolled back out of that, but you can see here where this side of the building's fine. Same with this one. So I assume if you've followed what I've said, you probably don't have my same result with this weird seam diagonally. Anyway, so now let's just go into Unity and show you how you can texture your object here. So we're going to file save, and then we're going to file export, and we're going to export this as an FBX and call this building, and then click export FBX. So I'm back in Unity here. Go ahead and create a folder and call it like My Assets. Hit enter. Create another folder. Call this one Objects. Hit enter. And now you're going to right click on this and do Import New Asset. And then you just go find your asset here, which is going to be that building FBX. Pick on that and then click import. Now you're going to see what happens is it's going to bring in a couple different things from Blender. So we need to fix this. All I want is just the mesh. I don't need the camera and this other cube I've got there. So come back to Blender. We just clean this up. So what you can do is let's rename the cube layer. Let's call this building as well. You'll see there's sort of a method to that. And then you're going to click on camera, right click, and delete. So all you want is render and world, and then do file, save. We also don't want two meshes. So now that we've got this saved sort of in the layers that we want, let's do file, save as, and let's call this whatever you're calling building or whatever. I'm going to call it test. I'm going to call it test underscore baked. And we'll save that. Now what I'm going to do to this one is I'm going to get rid of the base map because I don't need that anymore. So you're going to click remove UV map, and now all I've got is the one baked map. You can see if we go back into Unity, one we brought in has 46 tries, 4 sub meshes, and the 2 UVs, and we don't want that. We want to clean that up. So basically we're just coming in here removing some things. Now the one thing that you need to do too is on your textures, you can tell the map to pick that baked UV map. So if you come to each of your materials, this is more inside of a Blender thing I believe, but if I click brick, click the checkerboard and scroll down, you're going to see here we're mapping in the UV coordinates. When we had 2 maps, you would see that there was a base and a baked. Just pick the baked there. Honestly, I think since you only got 1 map, it doesn't matter at this point. but do it for each of the materials to be clean here. Okay, so I'm going to save this. We're going to export out that XBX or FBX again. Just overwrite this one, and then come back into Unity. I'm just going to delete this. So you come to building and hit delete, get rid of it, and then import it again. Let's right click on there and import this building FBX. Now you're going to see how it's coming in now. Much better. 1 UV, 4 sub meshes, 46 tries. You're going to see it brought in all the materials, but it's named them as the textures. I don't really like that. So let's go to the inspector on our building. So click the top one here with the little folder where it's got animations. Unclick import animation, click apply because we don't have one. The rig should be none on animation type. Come to our model, and then what we're going to want to do is add a collider to it if it's going to be within the range of a golf ball. If it's well off, we don't need to do this, but you can generate collider. And then we're going to change the material naming down here to from models material and click apply. So you see it renamed them. I still don't like that. I would actually rather it be from model, name, and materials. So this way we can keep track of everything. So we're going to go delete all these other ones. And just because what ends up happening is I end up putting all my objects in this same folder and then the materials in here, but then I know what goes with what in terms of materials. Now we need textures for all these. So I'm going to right click on the object and create a new folder and call this one textures. We got to bring in these 4 textures, the brick, roof, stone, windows. Right click on here, and then we're going to go ahead and import new asset, and then you want to bring in all these textures. So we've got to bring them in one at a time. We're almost done. Alright, so now we've got our 4 textures in here. You can inspect each of them if you want them to be true color or not. You can change that and apply that. I'm going to leave it as is. And then just go build the albedo channels here. So you're building brick, left mouse click and drag, the roof, the stone, and the building, the windows. Alright, now you can see it did save the, it brought in that color that we had chosen for each of those. And in the end, what you can do now in Unity is just make this all pure white. Okay. And actually, I don't use the standard shader for a simple object like this. I do legacy, and you're probably going to do bump diffused if you want to put a normal map. I'm just going to put diffuse on here since because we didn't make a normal map for this, but you can diffuse legacy shaders. All right. So now the only other thing is I want to make a prefab for this. And the way I'm going to do that is make just one more folder into my assets or within the object. Well, let's do in my assets folder, and let's call this prefabs. And right click on here, create prefab, and we're going to call this building. And all you're going to do is left mouse click and drag the building to the prefab. And so I do this with all of them, so I don't do anything in the objects. You could actually drag this out here, but I don't do that. I basically put all my materials, textures into my objects folder, and then I use the prefabs for when I'm placing things. Now, the one thing you can go back and do is you're going to see the scale's not right on this. You could go back to your object, your building, and change the scale factor. So let's just change this to 2, hit enter and apply that, and you'll see it increases the scale of our buildings to whatever you want it to be. Now you can also do them by hand and individually scale them to what you want them to be. Now you can see that I did this incorrectly. My brain is fried, but we only wanted one material, so what the hell am I doing? So let's change our building brick material. We should have done it in Unity or Blender and added a material here. And this is just our baked, so I'm going to call it building because that's our last one, and I'm going to delete all these other ones. I apologize. That's how you would do it if you're doing them individually, but now this building texture is going to be, we're going to end up assigning this to the entire building. Go into edit mode, click assign, and scroll up here and click new, and this is going to be our building PNG. Alright, so that's what is mapping that. So now I've got my, save that. Let's export that as an FBX again. Geesh. Sorry. Go delete our building and import new asset, building FBX. And now you'll see, let's get rid of all these other guys we just did. That was fun. And our buildings come in. We go at animations, remember we don't want that. Apply, your rig, no animation. Generate a collider. Now you could just leave it as base texture name. Like I said, I like doing the model material. That way we know what's going on. If you call this school building, you'd be able to differentiate with some other objects you have. It could also be the base texture name. You could leave that. That looks kind of silly, but now our texture that we want to bring in is actually that building PNG. There we go. And then make that the pure white again. And now you'll see if we drag this building, we should be able to overwrite the old prefab. And voila. Okay. So that is one way to do it. So you can see here, you know, if we zoom in on this, well, even that silly line it made doesn't look all that bad. But that's it. And I will show you in a second video on the other way to do it, which is build it in Photoshop first and then map it.